All right, everybody. Welcome to episode 3 of the Swing Society podcast. I am Chris Howard. Usually I'd be joined by my good buddy, Shaheen. He is unfortunately out this week. He's working on some stuff. Everything is good there, and he will be back joining me next week for another awesome conversation. So this week, I have a pretty special guest for anyone who's ever done one of my golf schools. You'll recognize this guy. But the theme this week, we are going to answer a bunch of questions. I reached out to my golf school Facebook group. I asked everyone to send in some swing questions, and we're going to answer a bunch of them during the podcast today. Where am I? I am once again in a hotel. I am in a hotel in Portland, Maine, recording this. Day after it comes out, I'll be over in Albany, and then heading to Syracuse, Rochester, Buffalo, and Chicago to round out this week. There's a couple spots left in the New York run there. So if you hear this real quick and you are interested, send me a DM. Depending on the city, we might be able to get you all set up with that. But like I said, today we are going to be answering a bunch of golf swing questions. And I'm going to be joined by my buddy and person who teaches all my golf schools, my assistant, Max Cooper. There he is, right there. Welcome, Max. A lot of people who listen to this would know who you are. They met you in a golf school, and if they don't know who you are, they will meet you pretty soon. So let's start this out. I know who you are. Why don't you tell everyone who you are and what you do?
All right. So, hi guys. My name's Max. I am Chris's assistant now, full-time assistant. I've been playing golf for 11 years. Chris has been my coach and I guess you're still technically my coach whenever I need you. You probably for what now? Close to 10 years. Played some Division One golf, played some professional golf, and now I am full-time teaching.
Yeah. He's the guy who you'd recognize working short game and putting in all my golf schools. So Max, I'm gonna pose the first question to you. I know you have a long list, and after you answer this, you can fire that list at me, and I'll start answering the questions. But this one wasn't asked by a golfer. I just have it for you. What do you think the biggest key to improving your short game for the average amateur golfer is?
Biggest key would be hitting down on the golf ball. The amount of times I've seen players try and hit up on a chip shot is way too many times to count. It's just the biggest killer for most of their games because they think if I have to hit the golf ball higher, I have to sit back on my back foot and add loft to the club and try and help that golf ball get up in the air. And they don't realize that a golf club already has loft on the club. So all they have to do is just hit down on the golf ball and they would be set for life with their short game.
I agree with that. We were talking about how many people start out the sessions just blading ball after ball over the green, chunking it, hitting it fat. That's one of the way. I mean, we work a lot more than just that in short game, but that is a beginning concept. So, what you got for me?
Alrighty. First question comes from Greg in Denver, and he says, when you advocate moving that lead knee out for torque and thrust, are we internally rotating that lead femur?
So I think the easy way to picture this for the average golfer is: are you taking the lead knee around, moving the lead knee external? I definitely advocate that. I am known as a coach who likes a rotational golf swing, right? Shaheen and I talked about, preferences a couple weeks ago. And I definitely, if I'm building a junior golfer, prefer that, right? I think that a lot of people for years have said, start the downswing with the hips. I think that gets dangerous because most people, when they think start that with the hips, are going to push hard out of their trail leg, which will generally move the lead side of the pelvis too far forward and force a player into a bit of a back bend in transition, which makes rotation difficult. There are a few players who could just slide right on top of it and then start turning, the bump and turn players that some coaches teach, and they can do it well. But for a junior golfer, I'm always building, getting the transition to begin with the lead knee going around. That's going to get your pressure forward if it's moving around, and it's going to set you up to really explode out of the lead side, right? You're really torquing into the ground in that initial transition. Belt buckle's moving forward. The chest should move into a good position. Then you push out. I think that's pretty effortless. I do advocate that 100%.
Our next question comes from John in Martinsburg, and he says, "Can you spin a ball effectively without shackling?"
You could get spin. You're gonna find it hard to get compression if you don't have any shackling at all. I would never advocate any shot being hit without some form of shackling. You don't need massive amount of shackling. I mean, spin's coming from spin loft, it's coming from friction, it's coming from speed. Generally, you want that shaft leaning somewhat forward so you can get the loft in a more neutral position to slightly de-lofted. That way you can get that friction that you're really looking for, better transfer of energy, and more spin.
Yeah.
That's Johnny Butts, by the way. We know who that one is. I've known that guy for years.
All right. Next one comes from BJ in Baltimore, and he says, "The release difference with the irons and in the setup, how to have the correct distance from the golf ball."
So I'm going to take that as a multi-part question. Release difference, I'm guessing, between the driver and the irons, or wedges and all that. There isn't really if you're thinking about the club head and the club in general, there's not really a difference per se. I like some shaftling with the driver. I want that thing de-lofted. I want a player hitting up on it. With an iron, maybe you're getting a bigger de-loft. Your hands are more forward. The release pattern is generally the same. The difference would be in tilts. You're getting a little bit behind it. You have a little bit more lateral bend, maybe a little bit more side bend with the driver than you would with an iron. You'd be more on top with the driver with your chest. So that could be a bit of a difference. In terms of how far you are away from a golf ball, I think that's pretty easy to do for a player. So I don't like thinking in terms of distance from a golf ball, right? I like if a player gets their balance points correct, if a player gets in there, we know that I like pressure in the balls of the feet for everyone. Doesn't matter what you're trying to do with the golf club. We want the pressure in the balls of the feet. So if you can get in there and really put yourself in position where you have the balls of the feet, kneecaps, and back of the armpits all lined up, and then you can just get the arms feeling like they're hanging down from the sockets with a bit of an angle, and as long as the arms aren't reaching away from the shoulders or too close to the body, if they're just hanging straight down, you get a little bit of an angle, you're going to be in position where you're the right distance from the golf ball with every club, right? You're going to naturally move back. If you feel that starting to squish or reach, then you're getting yourself in a position where you're too far away or too close to that golf ball, which can cause you problems. But I don't think of it in terms of, make sure the butt of the club is this far from your belt buckle, anything like that. I go with the setup being correct and the arms hanging.
Yep, always round down from the thoracic spine. That's what you always taught me.
Yes, you are a perfect example of that setup. I mean, when you do it right, you get all those balance points. And let's talk your career for a little while. One of the biggest things that we would always fix when you were playing is the tilts would get off. You'd start to throw tilts, shoulder alignments would get off. You notice that the shoulders would get open, and before you knew it, the right shoulder was dropping down, and we'd have to recorrect that. And then generally you go back to playing really well, but that was your tendency to slip into that. So that would affect how far you are from the golf ball. That would affect your setup position. You fix those alignments, get everything centered again, and you feel like you're a different distance from the golf ball. So you would definitely be a prime example of someone who spends a lot of time working on those setup cues.
Yeah, and I think now that I've started teaching more, I kind of understand it a lot better now. And whenever I do have time to go practice, I can fit right back into that pattern that I have when I'm playing well. Because I know I know what it looks like, and two, I know the feels a lot better now, and obviously how to explain it and understand it. So whenever I go practice, usually my practice session recently have been pretty good just because I have a better understanding of what exactly I'm looking for.
When you see it and you start harping on it, I think players get into, in their careers, unless they have a coach on them, I think we would notice when you went off to college that the issue would get bigger because you'd be gone for time. I'd be out touring, and then I get a video a month later and be like, whoa, that dude's off.
Mhm.
When you teach it, you're more conscious of, basic things. And I think with players, we kind of go into a state of good players, especially where you're flowing. I've always said that, good players, they come in, they get primed up, their game's good, and they kind of get into a flow, and they get even better a couple weeks after a lesson, right? But that's just because they're playing well and they're still within the parameters that work for them, but they're starting to slip when they're going through that, right? And then they get into a position where they are functioning outside the parameters, and then they're so far out the parameters, it just falls off. And that's just a cycle that good players go through if they don't have eyes on them enough. And when you're teaching it, you tend to pay more attention. I mean, from my experience when I was playing, when I first started teaching, you tend to pay more attention to those things in your own golf swing when you don't have an eye directly on you.
Absolutely. I mean, even though I haven't been playing much, my last round I shot 66 and I hadn't touched a club for a month. So obviously just kind of being a little bit more precise with what I'm working on when I practice has helped a lot.
Yeah, you're a pretty good player there, bud.
hmm All right, moving on. Next question comes from Mark in Baltimore again. We got a couple Baltimores on this list. He
All right.
says, started getting onto my lead side better and making more solid contact, but I still leave the club face open and slice the ball. What are the main causes of an open face, and what drills help players learn to square the face consistently?
Oh, what are the main causes of an open face? I mean, you want to get back to the most basic of basics, that the grip is not matching wrist angles and impact. That's a basic reason the club face isn't open. You can open it in the backswing due to, forearm roll, alignments, not getting them back into position, coming down. There's a lot of different reasons that the club face can be open. And generally, when someone says they're getting onto the lead side, I've noticed that a lot of players feel the lower body getting into the lead side and tilt back a little bit more. Well, that throws the club more under and can open the face when you're doing that. So there are a lot of reasons. That's one of the, player specific things that you'd really want to see and check on.
Absolutely. I mean, everybody's different with their swing. There's no one set cause for why a slice happens.
No, there's a million different reasons that you see players slice. And I mean, you've been teaching there. I have always said that a majority of players slice because of something they've done in their backswing.
Either don't have enough depth, grips incorrect, pressure issues, whatever it may be. There's so many different reasons.
Yep.
So next one comes from Ralph in Baltimore again. What are drills best for speed training that won't kill your back?
Best drills that won't kill your back. If you're doing speed training correctly and your swing, has proper alignments to it, it should not put a lot of pressure on your back. I remember Ralph and I had this conversation about a week ago when I saw him in Baltimore, talking about, issues with movement patterns that cause pain in the back and stuff like that. And, when you have a shaft that is coming down real steep and you have to tilt out of it to try and get it in a functional position, that is going to put a lot of pressure on you. That's going to cause you to be in a position where there can definitely be some pain caused in the golf swing. So making sure, what you're working on is solid, making sure that you are in a good fundamental position with your swing will help take away the pain. If you're making some crazy movements that don't match biomechanically, you can look at seriously jacking up your back and doing speed training, because speed training in theory you're pushing everything outside of your comfort zone. You're going faster. I always say, to increase speed, the best way to do it is train your body to be in balance with a harder, faster swing, right? So pushing yourself outside of your normal balance points and training your body to be balanced there, if you got some weird wonky movements in your golf swing, that can hurt.
Mm-hmm. I remember when you were having me do speed training, I was swinging out of my shoes for a couple months straight. I mean, it worked. I picked up a lot of speed, but the uncomfortableness from it was not fun for a while.
I think you are a good person to ask this to, because you do hit the ball a long way. And if you look at my junior golfers, general rule of thumb, somebody who's working with C. Howard Golf through their development stage is going to hit it far, because it's something that I want out of all my players. I think distance is key. What do you feel in your own golf swing sets you up to hit the ball as far as you do?
Sets me up, I think, this is something not everybody can make. No one can control this, but I think my height has a huge impact on it. I'm a little bit taller than most people, so that helps with hitting the ball a little bit further. Going to the gym a lot helps.
Mechanics wise,
I would say not having any stall out in my swing helps. Just being able to rotate freely. If there's any timing element, you have to slow your body down. So I don't have any of that in my swing, which lets me just continue to rip around the corner. And that's why I think I generate so much speed.
You definitely push out of the ground. And I've used you as a 3D model on how to get out of the ground and create speed. So you're definitely a great example of that. I would say, yes, your height does help, but I mean, you've seen some of my little ones hit the ball a long way, and that's because you rip out of the ground. That's something that you're always looking to do, and you do it incredibly well. So yes, you're blessed by height, which is, I mean, you create some obscene distances. I've seen you playing qualifiers against other pros, and you smoke it by them. And part of that is your advantage with height, but you do things well. So what you got next?
Absolutely. So next one comes from Tom in Detroit. He asked, what is a good drill to feel the release of the club?
What is a good drill to feel the release of the club? So release is different from pattern to pattern, right? I mean, some people are going to feel like it's a turn and punch. Others are going to feel like it's a roll. Depending, more vertical swingers of the club are going to feel like it's a roll. So if you're doing that, a good drill would be toe up, toe up. If you are a rotational player, you're probably going to want to toe it down, keep the right elbow to the side, and where you're just holding angles through impact and then releasing it out
the
there.
No-throw drill.
The no-throw drill. Yeah, you could feel like everything's tight to your body and go from there. And then eventually you add the throw in to feel that release, right? They're two very different release patterns, through impact. So depending on what you're trying to achieve, that both of those drills can really help a player improve their release.
Absolutely. Just got to look at what swing type you have before you figure out what drill to do. You don't want to do one and then you're the other swing, because that's just going to throw you off completely.
Correct. Yeah.
Next one comes from Bill in Little Rock, and he says tips on hitting long irons into the green.
Tips on hitting long irons into the green. I get this a lot. So obviously, long irons to a degree are a higher speed player will always have an easier time with this than a low speed player, right? Higher speed player is going to be able to create more spin to get the ball to stop. Low speed player is generally going to have a more run up style shot where they can't get the same stopping power with a 3-iron as they can with a 7-iron. That's just the way it is. You have to know which one you are, right? That is totally, in my opinion, a speed player game. If you start trying to manipulate and add a bunch of loft as a low speed player with a 3-iron, you might struggle with contact. And B, you start turning that 5-iron into a 7-iron, you have a big gapping issue, right? So you kind of just have to accept, as long as you have the appropriate, impact alignments all the way through. I think, if you have the right amount of forward shaft lean, low speed player is going to want less shaft lean than a high speed player. As long as you can match that, you can function with as a lower speed player around a green. But that's the tip. There's just no magic, bullet to that. The whole, we'll push the longer irons way forward so you can hit more up on it. Then you're just creating a gapping issue in your bag, and there's no point in that. Go put a hybrid into it. Getting fit properly for clubs. They're low speed players. I would always recommend getting a hybrid in there. The difference in mass in the head, and how it's weighted, that can help a player get the ball up in the air. So get fitted if you're a slow speed player. No magic bullet for that one.
Whatever you work on with your your higher irons is what you do with the lower irons. It's the same swing, just with a different club. I tell all my students that it's like there's no real difference with what you're working on. It's just, I think one is just a mental hurdle that players have to get over, just because it's a longer club and it doesn't have as much loft on it. They think it's like, I have to do something completely different with this swing, and that's not the case at all.
Yeah. Great.
So next one,
you've been trained well, Max. You're going to be a good teacher. You are a good teacher. You're going to keep getting better and better. You know what you're talking about.
I have an okay teacher. So next one comes from Jason in Detroit. Shout out Jason. That's our guy. He's made the biggest improvements in our golf school so far. He asked, what is your biggest tip on hitting flush wedges? Also, what you told me on course about my wedge distances are amazing. 60, 56, and 50, all about 15 to 20 yards longer now. Not really swinging any harder.
What was the initial question?
What's the biggest tip on hitting wedges flush? Hitting
wedges flush. I like that Jason asked that. Jason's the man. He's been with me for a couple years. Detroit. He had the biggest statistical handicap improvement last year. He went from the 90s down to the 70s, regressed a little bit heading into this season, and now he's all the way back into the mid 70s again, 1 week after the school. So I think we're tracking towards par with my man. He's a great guy. Biggest key to flushing wedges, pressure movement. The shorter swings. I like to make sure players aren't in a position where they're adding a lot of movement in their golf swing. The more movement you add, the more you can mess up. I like pressure set. I like shaft angles set at address, and I like people to just fire on it.
I think when we were working on with my wedges, a good drill would be to stick a towel underneath your armpits and feel like everything stays more connected. That helped me at least with my wedges the most. That was right before we went to Australia last year, and I just remember hitting all my wedges as pure as possible just because I felt everything stay more connected.
Yeah, you were always a player that got a little armsy with wedges, and that forces you to use the body more to hit it solid. So that's an excellent drill, and I think a lot of players could use that drill. I agree with you. I think a lot of players try and hit with their arms and their hands, right, instead of getting flow with their shoulders. Obviously, with the scoring wedge, you got more vert with the shoulders, but you're still using your chest to drive that movement. And if you lose, that connection, it can be troubling in the golf swing. So that's a fantastic drill.
Yeah. And I think during my career, the reason I struggled so much with the wedges was because I was too armsy and I wasn't using my body enough. So that was a good thing that you kind of brought that up because that's a struggle that a lot of golfers face.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
So, final question for you comes from Omar in Dallas. He's made a lot of progress in our golf schools this year so far.
Mhm.
He asked, "What is your advice on hitting woods? Like the best." Let me start that over. Advice on wood hitting and best advice on selecting proper woods and what to look for when hitting.
Selecting proper woods, go get fit, see things that fit your eye. I mean, to me, I grew up in a different generation. I think one of the most important parts of club fitting is seeing something that, you know, matches what you're looking for, that you like the visuals on. I think that's absolutely critical. Best advice for hitting woods is, a three wood's kind of in a middle ground. We're still hitting down on it, but not as much as an iron. So it's creeping up in our stance a little bit, especially when we're teeing it off. But I think a lot of people try and, hit up on woods out the fairway, and you're supposed to hit down on it. So making sure the ball position is not too far forward with the wood is something that's absolutely critical. And just treat it more like an iron than a driver, because if something's on the ground and you try and get it up, you're going to be doing a lot of weird things, and contact can become a problem real fast. So I got a couple questions for you that people ask that I want to fire your way because they're short game questions. But one more from me. We talked about what's the biggest tip for improving your, pitches and chips and all that stuff. What do you think the biggest key that players need to look out for if they want to improve their putting abilities for the average golfer?
Biggest key would be using more of your shoulders when you putt versus your hands. I feel that I tell like most of the people that we teach, if they're a very handsy player, then that is a timing element. And usually if you have a timing element in your swing or somewhere in your golf game, it's really hard to match it up unless you're an elite player. So I always tell them use more of your shoulders because that's the main driver when you're putting, and take the hands more out of play.
All right. So this one is not a short game, and this comes from Steve way back in January in Columbia, South Carolina. You remember that trip? It turned into a snowstorm real quick when we left out of there and went to Charleston. Barely got that golf school, and then we got stranded for a few days. Started snowing like an hour afterwards. If you were thinking in terms of your own game, okay, and you're thinking full swing, we'll go with that. What do you think the most important thing to your game is when you're dealing with full swing?
I mean, you talked about it earlier, and I think for me especially, it has to be setup. If you don't have correct balance points at all in setup, and you have to have, is typically if you don't have good setup, you have to have some sort of compensation in your swing, which leads to another compensation in your swing. So I feel like if players can learn to have proper setup, which is balls of the feet, kneecaps, back of the armpits all in line, and they're pretty balanced the entire swing, then that makes the golf swing a lot easier. They don't have to worry about trying to manipulate something else later down when they're hitting.
Cool. I agree with that. No, I think the final question we both have, I'll answer it too. Um, Mike from Martinsburg, long-term client of mine. Um, is it easier to help a newer golfer or a more experienced golfer? And you're just stepping into the more experienced golfers in these schools. We start out with beginners and all that, but for me, I will say easier to help a more talented player. I'll say that a more talented player is easier because you could put them in positions and they're going to figure out what you're looking for. There's more pressure on that because if you screw up a really talented D1 player or something like that, so you have to be smarter in terms of. I think you can see the reward faster with a newer golfer or a higher handicap. That's kind of why I like doing the schools. You can see the reward faster. So they're to me, they're more fun to work with. But what's your opinion on that, Mr. Cooper?
I think both is the answer here. And the reason for that, for a beginner golfer, you can work on building new habits and not having to work on trying to get old habits out of their swing. It's like you could teach them the right way to do it from the get-go, which if they are athletic and they have some sort of hand-eye coordination, then they're able to kind of figure it out quicker. Now, for the experienced golfer, like you had just said, if you're working with a good player, it's easier to give them the feel and they know how to work around that. And so I don't think there's I mean, working with anybody's getting, how do I say this? Working with any player is starting to become easier for me because I know what to work around with certain people. But I think helping anybody is just I don't think there's a right way to answer that. I think both is the answer.
I hear you. It's definitely different when you're working, depending on the skill level, how you're going to work, what you're going to work on. Oh, it's definitely different. Mr. Cooper, it looks like we're in two separate places, but you are currently down in the lobby of the hotel while I'm in the room. So we don't have echo on our phone doing this, but I look forward to seeing you back up here getting ready for dinner here in Portland here momentarily. But we've been out on the road now for almost 2 weeks. We got another week and a half, 2 weeks ahead of us here. This is a long one. Then we have a fun run through Anchorage, Alaska, Seattle coming up after the dates I talked about earlier. Then we head over to Australia and Asia to do a bunch of fun schools. So we'll be seeing a lot of you over the next couple months. I'm looking forward to it. You're doing a great job teaching these schools with me. All the golfers talk about how good the experience is when they get to see you helping them, and I'm really happy with that because I have been working with you and teaching you how I like people to be taught, and the fact that I'm hearing all that great feedback about you as quickly into your career as I have is something that makes me really happy. So keep it up. I will see you in a little while because I can't figure out how to turn this off on my own. But thank you, everyone who watched this week. We'll be back next week with Shaheen back. We'll be talking about some fun stuff in the golf instruction world. And thanks for joining me today, Mr. Cooper.